that I'll be talking about the stuff that I find really cool, which is first HTML5. So when I talk about HTML5, I talk about the actual HTML5 specification, right, which is on a W3C or on the WhatWig. There are a few other companies which go around saying that HTML5 is everything which is new in the web, which I and many other people don't agree with. HTML5 is the specification and it's called HTML5. And then there are different technologies which are peripheral, which are related but not actually part of the specification. Right? So the next few slides would be about the HTML5 as defined in the actual specification. Right? But before we do that, let's come around to its origins. How did HTML5 actually begin, and what does it mean in the future, and what's this present state? So HTML5 actually began quite humbly. Initially, I guess many people actually remember the days of XHTML and people coding in, XHTML 1.0 strict or 1.0 transitional. That was the way in which the W3C actually thought the web is going to go. But us browser vendors actually, when we took a look at what developers are doing, we found that about maximum 3-4% of the web is actually valid XHTML. Most of the web wasn't really valid XHTML at all. So we were thinking, oh, okay, we need a new standard for the web which developers are actually following, because if there's a web standard which no one is following, what's this use? So Apple, Opera, and Mozilla, we formed a group of our own. It's called the WhatWig, and later on other people also joined. And we decided to work on our own implementation of HTML5. Initially it was called Web Applications 1.0. And later on, we kind of renamed it as HTML5 because that's a much better nickname for it and much more sticky and rememberable as well. Later on, the WCC started to see how much traction, HTML5 is starting to get and how little traction XHTML 2.0 is getting. So they said, okay, we'll listen to the developers and we'll abandon XHTML 2.0 as the next standard, and we'll adopt HTML5 as the next standard for the web. So this is the whole background story of how HTML5 actually began. It actually began in opposition by the WCC, but later on they kind of came around to the idea of HTML5 being the proper next standard for the web. When it comes to HTML 4.01 or 4 or 3 or 2 or whatever, everything before HTML5 the focus was on web pages. You make a page, you put some markup in it, and that's it. The focus was on web pages because people at that time didn't realize the full power of the web. How or in what way companies or web developers will start using it. But later on, we found out, people are taking the web really, really far. People are doing stuff like Google Maps and Flickr and a whole bunch of various applications. They felt like actual applications rather than just a simple web page. Right? So one of the core goals of HTML5 was to focus on web applications rather than just web pages. The whole idea behind HTML5 was to make sure that we have a proper standard through which people can make applications on the web, rather than just mere web pages. The whole idea, everything ultimately comes down to this. Can we make a web application using this standard? There were certain goals which people kept in mind when it came to HTML5. It should be able to run offline. It should have various features that native applications have, like determining the location of the user, for example, or a whole bunch of stuff, multi-threaded applications. So there were a bunch of design goals with HTML5, which the ultimate intention was to bring it on par or even better than native applications. One more thing that I wanted to, just dispel the myth, because there are many people who come around and say, HTML5 is basically anything which is implemented on WebKit, because it works on Chrome and Safari and that's it. That's a very, very big misconception. HTML5 is browser agnostic. HTML5 doesn't really depend on any one browser engine. Whether it's WebKit, whether it's Presto, whether it's any other kind of, or whether it's Gecko, any kind of browser or any kind of engine. HTML5 is a standard, and as long as all modern browsers support that standard, the support will be there. It's not dependent on just one particular browser engine, right? So let's dispel the myth that HTML5 is just the stuff which works on WebKit. It's not. No. HTML5 works on WebKit a whole lot, but it also works on Presto, which is in Opera, or it works on Gecko, which is in Mozilla, or it works on Trident, which is on IE, right? The newest versions. So each and every modern browser is working on HTML5. Like, it's not just one. Every modern browser is working on HTML5.
Shwetank, we have a feedback. Can you be a little louder?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
So
Thanks.
can you hear me now?
It is a bit
Okay.
okay now. Right.
So yeah, it's audible now. I guess so. So what I was saying was, HTML5 is browser agnostic, so it's not just dependent on one browser. Every modern browser is supporting HTML5 in various degrees, right? Some are working really, really hard, some are working not so hard, and every browser has their own priorities which they think they should work on when it comes to HTML5. So this is one of the most important slides, which is, why should you as